long before the rivers of the Niger Delta were mapped in ways foreigners could understand. The lands of the Ijaw and Itsekiri were alive with stories, songs, and the rhythm of water. Communities rose along the waterways, trading fish, palm oil, and wisdom passed down in generations. Among the Ijaw, men like Obafe and Taribo paddled canoes with skill born of decades, their hands knowing every current and whirl of the river. In the Itsekiri settlements, people like Laju, Olu, and Bawo tended their farmlands and shores, raising children who danced to drums that echoed the heartbeat of their ancestors. The two peoples were neighbors, but not always friends. Tensions flared like sudden storms, and rivalries over fishing grounds, trade routes, and influence in the delta grew over years. At first, there were small quarrels, canoes colliding, words shouted across water, but gradually, resentment fermented into open conflict. It began with Emem, a young Ijaw woman married to Bawo of the Itsekiri. Their union was meant to strengthen ties between the tribes, but love alone could not overcome centuries of pride and mistrust. Her family whispered that she was taken too far from her roots. Her in-laws, while outwardly welcoming, watched her every move. Misunderstandings ignited arguments, and soon the marriage became a symbol of tribal friction rather than unity. Meanwhile, Obafe, a respected Ijaw elder, and Olu, a wise Itsekiri trader, were caught between diplomacy and survival. Both understood the importance of maintaining peace, yet they saw their people suffer from raids and resource disputes. Fishing territories became battlegrounds. A net strung too close to an Ijaw canoe could be met with arrows. A palm oil shipment delayed might trigger violence at the docks. As the years passed, survival forced adaptation. Many Ijaw learned Itsekiri dialects to navigate markets without angering local leaders. Some Itsekiri children grew fluent in Ijaw speech to avoid being mistaken for outsiders when traveling downriver. Language became a shield, a weapon, and a reminder of how fragile coexistence could be. The conflict escalated when a dispute over a cluster of fertile islands erupted into outright violence. Taribo, a young Ijaw warrior, led a raid on an Itsekiri fishing village. Canoes burned, homes toppled, and families fled into the mangroves. Laju, whose father had traded peacefully for decades, watched helplessly as her community suffered. Her brother, Olu, tried to negotiate, but the Ijaw demanded tribute fish, palm oil, and allegiance. Marriages fractured under the strain. Women like Emem found themselves torn between loyalties, their hearts and bodies caught in the crossfire. Those married across tribal lines became targets of suspicion. Daughters of Itsekiri men married to Ijaw families were forced to flee, some returning to their birth villages, others hiding in the dense forests along the creeks. Sons married into opposing tribes had to disguise themselves, often taking on new names or abandoning their inheritance. It was said that during these years, some families learned entire dialects overnight. Mothers taught their children Ijaw songs to sing in the market. Fathers instructed sons in Itsekiri speech to barter safely along foreign shores. A child's survival depended on mimicry, and for the first time, culture became negotiable. Identity was a currency as vital as palm oil or fish. In one fateful year, a larger confrontation erupted over a contested palm grove. Kuriko, an Ijaw chieftain, challenged Bawo's authority over the land. Words escalated into blows, and soon, both sides were calling for reinforcements. Canoes filled with warriors, armed with machetes, bows, and the occasional firearm traded by European merchants, cut through the waterways. The battle stretched across islands and rivers, leaving a trail of destruction. Houses burned, crops were destroyed, and the air carried the acrid smell of smoke and blood. Amid the chaos, Laju tried to shield her younger siblings. She ran through flooded mangroves, wading through waters that reached her waist, guiding them toward a hidden island where they could survive. Her courage was whispered in both tribes. The Itsekiri admired her bravery even as the Ijaw cursed her name for standing in the way of their advance. The elders attempted peace talks, but trust had eroded. Olu met with Obafe under the shadow of a large Irako tree, each side bringing a handful of advisors. They spoke of treaties, tributes, and mutual respect, but both sides carried hidden agendas. Obafe demanded guarantees that no Itsekiri would enter certain fishing grounds. Olu demanded compensation for lost crops and homes. Even as words were exchanged, scouts reported new raids downstream, rendering negotiations almost meaningless. In the middle of the conflict, love and alliances became twisted. Emem gave birth to a child in hiding, and the child's mixed heritage became a symbol of both hope and hatred. Families debated whether the baby should remain with the Ijaw or be returned to the Itsekiri. In some homes, intermarriage was a death sentence. In others, it was a bargaining chip. The personal became political, and bloodlines were judged not by loyalty or love, but by the tribe of the father or mother. Survival required ingenuity. Fishermen adapted their nets to avoid detection. Traders disguised their goods and forged papers to prove ownership. Women developed secret paths through the mangroves, allowing them to move unseen. Children became messengers, carrying information between villages while avoiding patrols. Songs carried codes. Drums spoke in rhythms only the initiated could understand. Every act of daily life was a negotiation between life and death. Years passed, and the cycles of retaliation hardened. Every victory was temporary, every truce fragile. Families who had fled the villages established hidden settlements, often deep in the delta, where languages blended and cultures merged. Mixed heritage children learned to speak in ways that confused both tribes, a linguistic survival mechanism that later became a hallmark of Delta life. Amid the suffering, heroes emerged. Taribo, despite his youthful aggression, became a strategist, protecting Ijaw elders and redirecting raids to minimize casualties. Laju, the Itsekiri woman, became a beacon for refugees, negotiating for food and safety while caring for orphans of both tribes. Olu and Obafe, despite their initial rivalry, began a slow process of collaboration, understanding that survival and prosperity required compromise. By the third decade of conflict, the Delta had changed forever. The rivers carried stories of loss and triumph. Canoes now bore marks of battle, but also of resilience. Children grew up learning both Ijaw and Itsekiri words, absorbing the complex histories of both sides. Women became keepers of memory, preserving traditions while navigating a fractured social landscape. Trade routes adapted, new alliances formed, and while tension never fully disappeared, a fragile coexistence emerged. The war taught everyone a hard lesson. No tribe could exist in isolation. The Delta was a shared lifeblood, and control over it meant understanding not just geography but people. Language became a tool of survival, marriage a political statement, and identity a flexible, living thing. Old storytellers now recount the tales by the fireside. They speak of Obafe's cunning, Taribo's bravery, Laju's unwavering courage, Olu's wisdom, and Bawo's fierce loyalty. They speak of women like Emem, who bore the cost of two worlds, and children who learned to speak in code to survive. The rivers themselves seem to echo these stories, whispering to those who paddle upon them, reminding everyone of the bitter lessons of pride, war, and necessity. And yet, beneath all the blood and sorrow, the Delta endured. The people endured. The lessons of survival, adaptation, and understanding became embedded in the culture. The Ijaw and Itsekiri, though still proud of their separate identities, learned to respect the power of the water, the land, and each other. They understood that battles could not erase centuries of shared existence. Generations later, children born into this world of mixed heritage became symbols of hope. They spoke multiple dialects, understood the nuances of both cultures, and carried within them the memory of conflict as well as the potential for peace. Traders, warriors, and elders all came to see that coexistence was not a weakness, but a strategy. The Delta's stories, passed down through oral tradition, carry warnings and wisdom. They speak of the dangers of arrogance, the consequences of greed, the pain of betrayal, and the necessity of empathy. They tell of times when survival meant speaking another's language, when marriage became a bridge or a battleground, and when courage was measured not by victory, but by endurance. And so, the rivers continue to flow. The mangroves continue to whisper. The Delta remembers its wars, its strife, and its people. The names of Obafe, Taribo, Emem, Kuriko, Laju, Olu, and Bawo are not just names, they are echoes of a time when the waters ran red with struggle and hope, when the Delta taught lessons in both loss and survival, and when the people learned that strength often lay in understanding, adaptation, and resilience. Even today, fishermen tell stories of the raids, the battles, and the negotiations. Women sing songs of refuge and courage. Children practice languages they are not born into, just as their ancestors did, as if speaking in code were part of the water itself. And elders sit by the fire, recounting tales that carry the weight of history, keeping alive the memory of a Delta shaped by struggle, but also by the enduring spirit of its people. The Ijaw and Itsekiri continue their lives along the waterways, their rivalries softened but never fully erased. The story of their struggle serves as a reminder that history is lived in the river's current, in the words passed down, and in the courage of those who refuse to let pride or fear dictate the fate of their children. The river remembers, the Delta remembers, and so does every soul who calls this land home.